Hi, welcome back to another episode of the Healing Medicine Show. This is the show that we produce on Thursdays at 1 p.m. Central Time as part of the Healing Medicine newsletter. The vision for this show is to provide a platform for health and healing professionals to grow in their understanding and their practice of what it means to be healers. We aim to provide healthcare professionals with resources as well as inspiration for both personal and professional development practices, especially those that are rooted in holistic health. We believe that the change in healthcare starts by focusing on the health, well-being, and healing of the healthcare professional. Today, I'm very excited to welcome fellow pharmacist, fellow Arkansan, turned hypnotherapist, health coach, meditation teacher, all of the things I love, Dr. Beth Ann Davenport. Beth, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much, Blair. I'm so happy to be here.
So, Beth Ann, I want to dig into your journey going from pharmacy, leaving pharmacy, overcoming the challenges of what it even means to step out of that identity of being a pharmacist into something new. First, I want to start this interview just by asking you the same question I ask all of our guests on the Healing Medicine Show, which is, what does healing mean to you?
Yeah, that's such a good question. For me, healing really means to thrive. And to thrive means to really live life the way that you're uniquely designed to live it. So conditioning often tells us that because we are a woman, or because we are a healthcare professional, or because we are whatever label it is, a mom, a wife, a daughter, that there are certain things that label immediately comes with. And the older I get and the more I dive into really personal growth and development and all of those things, the more I uncover that everyone is uniquely designed, and that the way that we each thrive is also unique. And there are threads of similarity, but having the freedom to really create the way that you want to live, to me, is when true thriving happens.
I love that. And so you talked a little bit about conditioning. I feel from a very early age, oldest daughter here, and of course, overachiever, perfectionist, type A personality. I got a lot of my self-esteem from the achievement, from that. So for me, thriving was kind of like a double-edged sword, because I was always thriving for other people. And what I'm hearing you say is thriving is a very self-directed inward journey. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about your pivot out of pharmacy into something now that you feel has helped you to thrive in your life.
Yeah, for sure. So I was raised in pharmacy as well. I'm from Mountain Home originally, and my dad is a pharmacist there. So I really grew up in pharmacy, and he was ahead of his time in a lot of ways. He hired a nutritionist in the pharmacy in the 90s, which was, when we were all still eating Cheese Whiz, and really proud of it. And so there are a lot of things that I was exposed to, but as the story goes, you have to learn it on your own. So just because my dad was really great at it doesn't mean that I was like, oh, well, I'll just be right behind him. And so it was really when I was in my early 30s, and I had 2 children biologically, and then we had adopted a third. And I just reached this point of burnout in my own life physically that opened my eyes to, there were plenty of things that were going on with me that I had seen people take medicine to treat. But none of the results that those people got were results I was interested in. And so I really felt faced with this sort of question of, am I going to be a victim of this American motherhood, journey that I'm on now? Or am I going to really redefine what being a mom and a wife and a pharmacist at the time, I wasn't even in business for myself yet, what that's going to look like? And I very vividly remember making a decision one day, staring in the mirror, looking at the formation of a stereotype that I was not interested in, and saying, no, I would like to define another way. And I don't know how I'm going to get there exactly, but I'm open. I'm going to start looking, and there's, the whole seek and ye shall find is true kind of across the board. What you're looking for, you will find if you just really begin to place your attention toward it and really start seeking. And so that's what I did. And it has been such an intense and beautiful, sometimes brutal, you could say, journey, which I'm sure you know how that goes. But it started out leading to functional medicine, and then, has gone exponentially expansive from there.
I hear what you're saying, and you started with yourself as your first client. And I think this is something that I hear from my clients over and over is, I need to figure this out for myself before I can share it with other people. So I love that question of, am I going to be a victim of burnout, or am I ready to change my own story and change my own idea? I know as a mom of 3 as well, there was a lot of guilt. There was a lot of shame that I felt from admitting that I wasn't happy as a pharmacist, or in my career, in my marriage, or in my personal life. And one of the things that I think the slowing down, the pandemic really, everything came to a grinding halt during the pandemic. But one of the gifts that it gave me was the time to wipe everything off my plate and to decide, what are the things that I'm putting back? What are the things that I value the most in my life? Do I really value my kids being involved in every single sport, in every single season, at every single age? No, I do not. I don't value that at all. And I felt like that was selfish of me to draw that line. But then I realized that what was really best for my family, what was best for my kids, was having a happy, calm, present mom. And so then we started building back family time, and that it didn't feel selfish anymore. It didn't feel that I was sacrificing their happiness and their well-being for my own. That it brought us much closer together as a family to kind of heal that story that I had about self-care being selfish.
For sure. And I think in general, there's so much. So in hypnotherapy, we would call what you did a reframe, which is just you're not changing what's happening, or you're not changing really any of the actual circumstances. You're changing the meaning that your mind makes of it. And so it goes from, being selfish by choosing to prioritize things that maybe culture doesn't prioritize, to being loving and setting an example. And really, like, learning about mirror neurons, interestingly, has probably been the most beneficial thing for me in parenting, because I'm like, okay, if I'm setting an example of what it is to, like, put my oxygen mask on first, and to make sure that, my daughter doesn't see womanhood as a fully sacrificial experience and all of that, then that's what she needs to see. And so that is permission. And the word permission has been a real theme in my life, I would say, in the 5 years since I really started all of this. And it is, at the end of the day, we already have permission to be who we're created to be, to do what we're created to do. And it is really the culture around us that convinces us that we don't. And so once that limiting belief is eliminated, then all of a sudden the whole world opens up, and you're like, okay, what now?
Which can be kind of scary too, right? And that blank slate of a career can be exciting, but it also can be kind of intimidating. So I'd love to hear a little bit about your journey. So the attendees and the people watching this show are healthcare professionals who are at that place of really questioning whether or not they're in the right career, whether or not they're in the right field. And there's a lot of reframing, reprogramming, kind of the conditioning that we receive throughout our modern medical training and modern educational system, to always have a plan, to always have a protocol, to always know exactly where your end goal is. Something that I've seen with traditional medicines and alternative and complementary medicines is that self-led journey. So how do you recommend healthcare professionals that are in a workplace environment that's toxic, or that isn't serving them to really thrive, to begin questioning and bringing awareness to what is it that would really light me up? What would be, a resource you would share? What would be some advice you would have for the healthcare professional that is just so ready to just say goodbye and walk away from their career? What other alternatives or what options do you see for healthcare professionals that could help serve them at a higher level?
Yeah. So I think first and foremost, the process of questioning is really powerful, and not being afraid to go to every resource you have available to you. So my journey into entrepreneurship was partially kind of prodded. I was working part-time for Kroger, and I had held a clinical position and then pulled back to part-time whenever I just kept having or receiving children. And I got to this point where there was writing on the wall that part-time positions were going to be over. And so as soon as I knew that it was either I was going to have to be full-time or not have a job, and full-time was not an option for me, time-wise, I immediately went to every contact I could think of. I bought your book thanks to a coworker. I went to the Pharmacy Association and just asked them, when I initially started, I actually didn't do anything alternative. I was just doing clinical work for independent pharmacies, similar, I think, to what you started doing. So medication therapy management, maybe some immunization consultations, things like that. And then I also called my brother, who was a business consultant. I started working with a mentor who is in pharmacy, and I went to people who were both in healthcare and not in healthcare because I wanted a well-rounded perspective. But I think what I didn't realize when I first started out that I can see more clearly now is that the things that I am doing as a service within prescription wellness are really the things that I needed first to heal. And so I think that probably to answer your question, what I would encourage people to start doing is really maybe journaling or meditating on what is it that I really need? What is it that I really want? And that question, we talked about this a little bit before we started recording, but the word desire for me, I grew up in a really conservative Southern Baptist church, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I somehow absorbed that the word desire was equated with like bad, like lust or something really negative, or,
sinful,
what have you. And so I really was uncomfortable even asking myself, what do you want? Let alone speaking to someone else. I want blank. Like, I don't know that I said that sentence before age 35. I'm not exaggerating, outside of like ordering at a restaurant. And so once I really dove into that, the beautiful thing that I think is part of discovering what you want in general is that what you want is actually going to be good for those who you're here to serve, or those that you love, or what have you. And so whenever you can connect that, whenever you can reframe that lie too, right? That what you want is going to be bad for those around you, into what you want is actually fulfilling your purpose in life, then all of a sudden you're like, okay, how can I take what I have done, take what I've experienced, and create some form of a system or a blueprint that I can share with others to do the same. And you actually really set that example in your own way, through similar but different paths. So it's really cool to see the theme.
Yeah. I think, going back to what we said in the beginning is you're your own first client, and figuring out what works for you. I've always built things that I wish I would have had earlier in my career. We just finished a retreat in Costa Rica called the Healing Medicine Retreat. It's for women in healthcare that are stepping into more of an entrepreneurial journey as consultants. And I didn't have, like you mentioned, I didn't have mentors that were outside of healthcare. I think we kind of get stuck in the algorithm, so to speak. So the algorithm on LinkedIn or on Facebook that just continues to show us more of what we're already seeing. It's this self-confirming bias of, well, everyone's talking about this. And it's like, well, no, not everyone's talking about that. It's just everyone in your newsfeed is talking about that because that's the content that you're engaging with. And I think our brains and our subconscious works in similar ways. And you probably know a little bit more about, or a lot more about this than I do as a hypnotherapist. But this idea of what it is we're looking for shows up. So a lot of my clients will say, well, nobody's going to be willing to pay me cash for, a health coaching service. And it's like, well, that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, because if you think that no one's going to pay for your services, then you don't even make the offer, and then you don't get any sales, and then you've just proven your own point of no one's willing to pay for your services. So, for me, starting out with the Beginner's Business Blueprint and some of the stuff around the healing medicine retreats that I built was really to help clear the self-esteem blocks, the imposter syndrome, I'm from Arkansas as well, a very small town in Northeast Arkansas. And this idea of, if I have my own show and I put my information out on social media, on a digital presence, people are going to think, oh, Blair's too big for her britches. And I was able to kind of reframe that and turn that around of being a much more empowering affirmation of, I can kind of stand in my own truth and be the lighthouse for people, not necessarily saying do exactly as I have done, but to encourage people to shoot for their own highest potential. So when we talk about reprogramming the algorithm, how does hypnotherapy, you talked a little bit about mirror neurons. I'd love to hear the science behind it, because I think that's what's struck me as very unique about the way that you practice. You have this background in science and biochemistry and pharmacology and physiology, and combining it with the science of hypnotherapy. What does that look like from a practitioner's standpoint, and how do we begin to heal this broken healthcare system by being more open to other modalities of healing?
Yeah. So one of the things that really probably primed me for hypnotherapy was learning more deeply about the placebo effect. For instance, I did not know that even just like maybe 150 years ago, maybe less than that, prescribers actually, or physicians would prescribe a placebo when either they weren't sure what was going on, and so they're just like, we'll try this, or they suspicioned that it was really rooted in the mind, or they just wanted to kind of give someone a boost mentally in some way. And when I began to see that, now researchers are having a harder and harder time accounting for the placebo effect in the percentages within evidence-based medicine, because it is so powerful. But one of the craziest things that I learned was, it was less than a decade ago, there was a clinical trial for a cancer drug, and they had to completely throw the data out. I'm going to say this twice for effect. You may know this already, but they had to throw the data out because 1/3 of the patients receiving placebo lost all their hair.
Oh, wow.
1 in 3 receiving a sugar pill lost their hair. And that blew my mind, because at that point I was like,
chills.
Right? Because you're just like, okay, what is going on that our mind has this much impact over our body and we're not utilizing it? We are not taking advantage of how powerful our mind is. And we hear things like mind over matter, and that sounds very cliche, but it's actually very, very true. And so what I recognized, I, again, went just like with functional medicine, really, I got into hypnotherapy first as a client, not even thinking that I would be doing it in business. But you can't really go through hypnotherapy without learning a lot about how the mind works. And so as I was learning that, then I began noticing within my health coaching clients at the time that I could predict how successful they were going to be, both short-term and long-term, really based on the words that they used, even in a first conversation, because it reflected their belief in their own capability, their belief in what's possible, how much they were bought into stereotypes, which are basically just placebos in a different form. And so as I learned that, then I came to this realization that I can give people all the tools in the world to get well. But if their mind blocks them from implementing those tools consistently, it's really all for naught at the end of the day. And that's not what I wanted for them, because to thrive means, that it becomes automated. And so the science behind hypnotherapy, 90% of the decisions that we make in a day are on autopilot, and that is subconscious. 90%. And so what hypnotherapy allows you to do is to access those subconscious. I think of subconscious wiring just like computer programming. So just like back in the day when you had to go in and like uninstall a program and then put in a disk and reinstall, that's really a lot of what hypnotherapy is. It's going in, we get you into a state of hypnosis, which, by the way, you are in a state of hypnosis the entire first 7 years of your life. That fact alone was like, for me. And I believe I learned it just as my oldest child was turning 7. And I was so like, why could I not have known this sooner? But you're still in a state of hypnosis every day. It's just an alpha brainwave. So you and I are in a beta brainwave now. That just means we're awake and alert. We're having conscious discussion. If you're in like a theta or a delta wave, then you're sleeping at various depths. And alpha wave means that your conscious mind or your logical thinking is taking a rest. It's asleep, but your subconscious is awake. And so whenever we access that subconscious state, very scientifically, then we're able to access experiences from your past, generally in young childhood, but not always, that caused you to form beliefs that then led to whatever the experiences that you're wanting to change, whether it's anxiety or weight management or whatever. Literally everything starts in the mind at this point. You would have a hard time convincing me otherwise. And so as we're accessing those, then we take these physical structures in your brain that are thought patterns, and we break them down and then rebuild them systematically. And so what used to be a trigger to say that you feel selfish whenever you make a decision that is for you, then becomes a trigger for, oh, look, I'm doing what I'm here to do, and showing others how to do the same. And that's across the board for any type of behavior. Generally speaking, most people try to change, behaviors of action when it's really all of our actions are rooted in a behavior of thought or a pattern of thought. And so as we change those patterns of thought, then the behaviors get a lot easier. And so there's no guilt, there's no shame, there's no feeling of weakness or lack of willpower or discipline or whatever it is that you've kind of been shamed to believe. It's a matter of, oh, that's just a program that my mind is running. And so I'm going to shift that program, and then my behavior will shift as a result.
I see, weaving back into the placebo conversation into this conversation about kind of reprogramming or uninstalling a program, I guess we should say, the power of being able to replace the program that we're uninstalling with something that serves us better. I think for me, that is the sweet spot that healthcare professionals, if we understand this technology, we understand how neuroplasticity in the brain works, we understand the science of behavior change, we can really help coach our clients because of our own personal experiences and how we can see ourselves really as healers. Because to me, this is healing. This is what healing medicine can be. It's the combination of removing the physical things, that aren't serving us. Maybe it's alcohol, maybe it's overeating, maybe it's isolating, maybe it's anxiety and worry, maybe it's self-guilt, and by removing some of those things or uninstalling those programs and replacing them with programs that serve us to help us kind of reclaim that new identity. And so healer is a word that resonates with me. It may not resonate with everyone, but what would you recommend? You talked a little bit about journaling and meditation. For, final question for those that are watching who are pumped up and they're excited and they want to learn more about neuroplasticity, about hypnotherapy, about reprogramming these conditional beliefs that maybe even started in childhood. Is there a book? Is there a resource? Is there a podcast? What would you recommend to help healthcare professionals to shift into a more empowering program about themselves and about the value that they can bring others?
Yeah, so I definitely would encourage people. You can go to prescriptionwellness.com/hypnotherapy and get a little taste of, the type of hypnotherapy that I do, which is called Rapid Transformational Therapy. And I would encourage people first and foremost to know that the subconscious mind is not logical. And so it's important to recognize that dealing only in conscious, if even if they're in therapy or if they're talking to a mentor or what have you, and they're trying to work out and figure out, well, why is it that I'm having this struggle, or why can't I figure out what I want to do, or what have you? It's not a logical concept. And I could give you so many examples of even like big, deep things like phobias that you think are, have to be directly correlated in some capacity, and they're not. Like the phobia is representing a fear that is not remotely connected to the type of phobia itself. And so it's important to know that as you look for these opportunities, and I work with a lot of people who are really, really high achieving, high performing professionals, and the beliefs that are behind them often are sort of double root. So they have a belief that, that they have to perform for their worth or something of that nature. But interestingly, there's another belief behind that what's inside of us is not enough, or what's inside of us is wrong or bad, rather than what's inside of you is divinely planted there on purpose for it to be your gift to the world. And it's a gift for you as well. And so encouraging people to really, to me, there's really no replacement for hypnotherapy, because within the first session that I ever experienced, I had such a tremendous breakthrough that I never would have gotten to from any other route. And there might be other like assisted routes of doing it. I'm not familiar with all of the different types of therapy, but for me, hypnotherapy really allowed me to discover that I am really made to be a hypnotherapist, which not in 1,000,000 years would I have guessed. So when I talk to people who are younger, I'm always say, just leave your mind open, because I didn't know hypnotherapy existed 10 years ago, let alone that I would be doing it for a living, and loving it and breaking through it's a really beautiful thing to be able to heal with others, like, yes, they're healing and I'm healing at the same time. And often beliefs that they uncover about themselves are beliefs I didn't know I had as well. And so it's a beautiful, vulnerable experience to have together. And it doesn't look anything like the rigid white coat, experience that we were sort of inundated with in school, but I still am able to incorporate that and use, I still help people with supplements. I help people get off medication if they want. I help people just manage the medication that they're on if they want to be on it. And so there is this continuum of just find what works for you and don't stop until you do, and know that you have every right to do that.
I love that. And oh my gosh, so many amazing things there. I think, that overachieving personality is something that I resonates with me. I see that in myself. I see that in a lot of clients. I hear a lot of clients say, well, if I can just figure out, why I'm self-sabotaging, if I could just stop doing the things that I'm doing that are causing the things that I don't want to happen. Maybe it's people pleasing. Maybe it's taking on too much at work and then feeling resentful for taking on the responsibilities of others. Really coming to understand what is my responsibility in this situation, showing up with integrity for the things that we are responsible for, and letting go of the things that we're not responsible for, has been very helpful for me in my own journey. So Beth Ann, thank you so much for joining us here on the Healing Medicine Show. It's been a fantastic conversation. You mentioned your website. What is that the best way that people can connect with you?
Yeah. So Instagram is probably my social media most active spot, which is Beth Ann Prescription Wellness. It's very long. There's a long story behind it, but that's where you will find me. And then LinkedIn, I'm on as well. And then prescriptionwellness.com/hypnotherapy specifically, if you're wanting to look into that. But I love having conversations with people. I love, recognizing, just like when we had our first conversation and I knew we would connect. I had no idea how deeply, at what level we would be able to connect. And that's a beautiful thing that's happening across the board as we're all just kind of waking up to this maybe cocoon phase that we've been in for a while. And we're trying to, work our way out of the mush. And so, I love connecting with people wherever they find me, but LinkedIn, Instagram, and prescriptionwellness.com.
Absolutely. And thank you. Our goal with the Healing Medicine Show, our goal with the Healing Medicine community is to really provide a community of healthcare professionals who are choosing to take control over their careers, to redefine what health and healing means to them, to practice in a different way should they choose. So it's really fun to get to connect with people like you, and I knew we would hit it off as well. So I really appreciate your time joining us on the show, and I just wanted to thank you for sharing your gifts and to being so open to to being able to step into a new version of what it looks like to be a pharmacist, healer, and hypnotherapist.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Claire, for having me.